Okay, I'd like to talk about the resources you have inside the ALEKS program. First one would be your resources up here. Okay, you need to check that out. Go to that button. The first thing you should check out is your syllabus. Okay, so whatever class you're in, I'm in 109 dual credit right now. If you're in 109 regular class, it'll just say Math 109 syllabus. Okay, so I'm going to open that. It's a PDF. And this will be your syllabus. Okay, it gives you your course goals. Let's scroll down here. Tells you what you should be doing each week. Okay, you should read this. I know. Okay, academic dishonesty, testing room policy. Okay, for those of you in a regular 109 or an internet 109 class, you need to read this. Okay, you will be taking your final in the testing room. Okay, so please read that section. Here is your drop policy, first and second week, third to the 8th week, 8 to 12, 12th week. Okay. If you're not meeting with the instructor, okay, or not completing ALEKS activities, you can be dropped. Okay. Here's your midterm grading scale. Students ask us all the time, what's the midterm grading scale? It's in your syllabus. Okay, this is the final grading scale. Okay, now this is for 100 classes. If you're in 010, 020, this scale is different. All right, assessments, helpful hints. Okay, get logged on, meet the minimum percent, make sure you're printing off ALEKS materials. Okay, create a binder. I will have a video on the binder. Okay, and this here is your completion record, which I'm going to pull up your one for spring here. Okay, all right, so that's one thing you need to look at, syllabus. Okay, here's your grade sheet for the spring. Okay, hence that's when I'm making this video. Okay, all right, so each semester that is updated, okay, so what we're saying is January 12th, that's when you should start your course. On the 19th, you should have 20% done. So if you go to your report, on your green bar, you should have 20%. Now, you should also have 3 hours into the class. Each week, you should be putting in 3 hours. If you have 20% done, okay, let's say you take your initial assessment and you score a 50. You're like, great, I'm done until February 16th. Not, okay, because on February 16th, you should have 15 hours in. All right, just because you have 50 done back here on January 19th doesn't mean you slack until February 16th. You must be putting in time in ALEKS, otherwise you are up for drop. Okay, no time equals a drop. Okay, you must be active. No activity means that you can be dropped from ALEKS, dropped from the course. All right, you must still participate in the class. All right, now if you're at 50, great, you can get done with the class early. So you should be working, get done, and say you could be done by midterm. Love that idea. All right, there's nothing wrong with being done with the class early, okay? Also, you know, around here, the topics are kind of easy. It gets a little harder in this 60 to 70, 80% for the stats people, okay? Once again, depending on your class. I'm talking about stats right now, sorry, everybody else. Okay, how do you figure your grade? Right here. You're going to take your best blue bar before you take your final exam. Say you're at 88, you're going to take 88 times 0.25. That goes in here. You take your final exam and say you're at 86. You're going to take 86 times that, add up those points, that's your final grade. Now, let's say your best blue bar is 88, but you take your final exam and then your best blue bar is a 90. That 90 is your best blue bar. Okay, it is your best blue bar after you get done taking your final exam. Okay, best blue bar. best blue bar when you're done taking your final exam. Okay, so if your final exam is your best blue bar, that goes in both of these spots. Okay, but if you're trying to figure it before you take your final, then it's just your best blue bar right here. Okay, that's how you're going to figure your final grade. Okay, let's go out of that. Okay, here's the frequently asked questions. Okay, you should read that. Okay, so that's underneath the resources. Once again, make sure you're hitting the done button. Okay, syllabus and grade sheet found here in the resources. Okay, if you go into a topic, a lot of times this calculator is available. Okay, you need to use your calculator. It's a good resource. Okay, also I've discussed in another video this inbox. Okay, so you need to use the inbox to email your professor. Now, when you signed up for ALEKS, when you started the class, they asked you for an email. Hopefully you put an email in there that you check frequently. Because if an instructor sends you an email through ALEKS, that email goes to your ALEKS account, and it also goes to, let's say you put in a Gmail. It goes to your ALEKS account and to that Gmail that you put in when you registered. Okay? Now, say you get an email on your Gmail from your instructor, you cannot respond to that one through Gmail. You must log on to ALEKS to respond. Okay? That's just a copy that you get. Okay? Either you must log on to ALEKS or log on to like your John Wood account and send an email through there. Okay? The one that you get from ALEKS on your Gmail is just a copy. You cannot respond on that one. Okay? That does not work that way. You can only respond on this actual email right here. Okay? Alright, so I kind of think that covers the resources. You have your resources here, you have your inbox, and you have your calculator. Okay, you will not be using any of these other buttons up here. Okay, you will not be using dictionary, you won't have gradebook, you don't need the calendar, don't need worksheet, okay, you don't have options, okay, you don't need those other buttons. Alright? Good luck in the class.